Welcome to the intersection. Sorry, we're just a tad late there. Some late breaking stories that we were covering and didn't want to leave you guys hanging. So I am Michael Popok. You are on the Midas Touch Network. I'm revived and rejuvenated. I spent part of the weekend in Philadelphia at the Net Roots conference, which is a collaboration of organizers, voting rights advocates, constitutional scholars, women's reproductive rights advocates, abortion rights advocates, immigration rights advocates, authors, professors, and the like. I was there with Court Accountability Action's Lisa Graves and Alex Aronson, who hosted a number of panels that were about the reformation of the United States Supreme Court. In fact, one of the panelists, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, is going to be with me tomorrow on Legal AF to continue that conversation. But I did have the opportunity to interview Representative Jamie Raskin. We're going to see some aspects of that interview today about the attempt by the Trump administration to not only dole out funds to those that attacked our law enforcement and our democracy on Jan 6th, but also for the now appointed Attorney General Todd Blanche, whose appointment answers the question, how low did Todd Blanche have to go and grovel and debase himself and throw away whatever shred of ethics and professionalism he had in order for the fourth time, once a bridesmaid, four times a bridesmaid, to finally get the nomination, the nod to be the Attorney General. We now know that. I'll be talking about a number of those lawsuits that he did in order to show Donald Trump complete fealty and loyalty and bootlickingism, if that's a word. And Jamie Raskin talks about Todd Blanche, a new law that he's proposed named after Todd Blanche, using all his letters in his name, to stop the super pardon that Todd Blanche came up with in the wee hours of the night, probably led to the resignation of the Treasury Department's general counsel, in which Todd Blanche on his own just absolved with a stroke of a pen, or attempted to, the Trump family of any and all criminal and civil liability brought by the United States, binding the hands, trying to, of future departments of justice. I don't think that holds up in court. I don't think that holds up in future departments of justice. I'm not even sure it holds up this Friday when Judge Williams in Miami receives her final briefing about whether there's been fraud committed on the court by Donald Trump and his lawyers about the settlement that gave birth to, that was the midwife, if you will, of this unholy deal. And I interviewed Summer Lee, Representative Summer Lee, who a part of her district in Pennsylvania is Pittsburgh. She's on the Oversight Committee hearing. Both the Jamie Raskin interview and the Summer Lee interview about Pam Bondi's testimony are up on Legal AF YouTube yesterday for Jamie Raskin, today for Summer Lee, and you should check those out. I'll give you some programming notes that are coming up. Got Senator Sheldon Whitehouse on the Judiciary Committee for the Senate with me tomorrow. I just interviewed Keith Ellison, the Attorney General for Minnesota, about a really groundbreaking piece of writing he did for the Minnesota Law Journal to hold corporations accountable for street crime. And I think you're going to find that interview, which is going up tomorrow at 9:30, really, really fascinating. And then I've got, for those who are the eagle-eyed within the intersection audience, over my right shoulder, left to you, is some new hardware. Look, 1, 2, 3. Those are the Webbies. I finally received them in a giant box to my home. That's where remember when I said a month or so ago, we swept the Webbies. Well, there they are, right on top of our YouTube 1 million subscribers. That's like my ego cabinet. But I'm just an ambassador for you guys. I just accept. If I could give everyone a piece of that hardware, you know me, I would certainly do it. I'm glad you're here on the intersection. And I also interviewed, and you're going to see clips from it today, and it's up today, Brendan Ballou. If you don't know about the Public Integrity Project, you need to, because this is a group that just got formed in the wake of Donald Trump's lawlessness this term, there's a bunch of law firms and public interest law firms that all got formed, as big law, traditional big law, bent the knee and gave $1 billion worth of free legal service to Donald Trump, almost like after a fire, a wildfire, flowers start to grow, in the burned out carcass of the forest. All these little firms and public interest groups got created. And Brendan Ballou and his group are handling 3 major cases right now. And I talked to him about a couple of them. One, he's representing Katie Fang, our friend and colleague, against Todd Blanche about the Epstein files and the release of the Epstein files. And there's some new developments. Things are heating up in Judge Sullivan's courtroom. And you'll hear from Brendan Ballou, the lawyer for the Public Integrity Project that's handling the case for Katie Fang, for sure. Then he's also handling a case we're going to get to actually first up to try to stop the 90-foot-high claw on the White House lawn where Donald Trump's pimping out the White House for profit. That fits on a bumper sticker. He's pimping out the White House for profit. He's prostituting himself again, and our sacred legacy, including that of the sacred temple and pantheon and memorial to the greatest president that the United States has ever known. Fill in the blank. Abraham Lincoln. Trying to use the Abraham Lincoln Memorial as the backdrop for a weigh-in or a face-off between 2 MMA fighters? Are you effing kidding me? And all brought to you by cryptocurrency.com, a Singaporean company that's making hundreds of millions of dollars, along with TKO, which is a company owned by Dana White that runs UFC. And guess who an investor of TKO is? You can put it in the chat. Donald Trump and his family. And it's all being brought to you on Paramount streaming service, Paramount Plus. I know people are out there going, no, not Paramount Plus. I like, and then fill in the blank of your favorite show. I don't know, is Yellowstone on there? I don't even know. But it's owned by the Ellison family. So if you're supporting Paramount, you're supporting the Ellison family, who took over CNN, who took over CBS, who took over 60 Minutes, and took over the South Lawn of the White House for the UFC fight. All for the nation's, I'm sorry, strike that. Withdrawn. Let me restart. All for Donald Trump's birthday on Sunday, the 14th. And there it is. Yes. Isn't that beautiful? Scarring of America. Oh, sometimes I don't know if I'm watching a sci-fi movie, or sci-fi, The Boys on Amazon Prime. I don't know what I'm watching when I watch this president, but he, this multi-billion-dollar earned income grift, violates environmental law, National Park Service law, separation of powers, and the rest. You'll hear from Brendan Ballou about that case. Anti-weaponization fund, so many things to update you on. We've got on Friday in Judge Brinkema's courtroom, she's going to consider whether to continue to block the weaponization fund. Department of Justice says, block what? We're already not doing it, Judge. Not so fast. And Adam Klasfeld, one of our reporters and contributors on Legal AF for All Rise News, is going to be in the courtroom, and he's going to pop out. He's going to do a one-on-one for our Legal AF audience. So that's going to be on Friday. I'm going to be watching closely to see the filing on Friday in the anti-weaponization fund brought by the government and Donald Trump to try to convince Judge Williams that they didn't commit fraud. That ought to be interesting. And then I want to talk about last 2 things today. One is an update on all things Epstein. I'll do that through the lawsuit brought by Katie Fang, new developments there. And Brendan Ballou will be back with another clip of my interview related to his representation of Katie Fang to try to get all of the Epstein files, including those that are in a foreign language. They actually blocked in an international child sex trafficking ring. They just threw up their hands to the DOJ and said, oh, it's in a foreign language. I don't know. Put it through AI. I'm sure it'll translate it for you. and Donald Trump documents that have been continue to be blocked. And so there's a new filing by the Department of Justice that made me laugh out loud, and then have to get on to interview Brendan Ballou about it. And then finally, the Southern Poverty Law Center got a great order as we came on the air from an Alabama federal judge on the heels of some testimony today in Congress. And I want to bring it together as Donald Trump effectively demonstrates that he hates the number one anti-hate group in America. And a federal judge in Alabama, of all things, may stand in the way of them being vindictively prosecuted. All that and so much more on the tonight's edition of The Intersection. And as always, as a reminder, put questions in the comments. We are live. I'll show you. I'll do a proof of life. I'll show you we are live. And my team is standing by. Time Life operators are standing by to take your questions. So let me just see if I can show you what the heck's going on here. Let's see. We must have some counter programming going on. I've only got 2,000 people on with me right now. I don't know what's happening. Is there something? What else is going on in the world that would take you away from the intersection? Let's kick it off with the UFC fight. So Trump doesn't comply with any permitting, doesn't comply with any environmental permits, National Park Service permits, and he just erects a 90-foot thing they call the claw on the South Lawn, and then decides to use the Lincoln Memorial. Why not? When you think UFC, mixed martial arts fighting, don't you automatically think of the majestic President Lincoln sitting in his armchair with the inscriptions within that hallowed pantheon of the Gettysburg Address and the second inaugural? Don't you automatically think of two guys stripping to their skivvies and trying to pound each other into submission, right? That's where you should do it. Is this why the reflecting pool is now tidy bowl blue? We had to get ready for the UFC fight. Billions of dollars are being expended, taxpayer dollars. And then so the expense is going to us, but the profit is going to Donald Trump and his cronies. Let me say that again. The expense is going to us and being borne by us. And the profit is going to Donald Trump and his cronies. How does that make you feel? So you're in the front of the line for the expense, and you're at the back of the line for any profit. It's a terrible business model, but it's one that Donald Trump has subjected us to. And so Judge Mehta told the parties after a couple of proud Americans brought this case with Public Integrity Project. And they said, and Judge Mehta said, all right, I see you're filing for a temporary restraining order to stop this thing from happening on Sunday the 14th. This is not a 250th birthday party celebration. That's July 4th. And he told the parties, come up with a briefing schedule that's really fast. So tonight, in about 45 minutes, literally, the government needs to file their opposition paper. I will cover that in the morning. And then tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern time, the Public Integrity Project needs to file its brief. And then the parties are available on the 11th for a hearing, which I'm sure the judge will pull together. I had the pleasure, as your ambassador, to interview Brendan Ballou about the lawsuit. His entity, his interest group is handling it. And let me show you a clip of Brendan Ballou and me talking about the UFC case.
Donald Trump is going to have a birthday celebration on the White House lawn with an MMA cage fight. Many people have already seen the gigantic claw structure that's been put up on the lawn and that Trump suggests he might keep permanently, like the Eiffel Tower. There's going to be potentially a walkout from the Oval Office, a weigh-in, and a press conference and face-off at the Lincoln Memorial. Now, I want to be really clear. This case is not about having events at the White House or even, at the Lincoln Memorial. The problem is the fundamental corruption of this event. So at this event, the UFC is selling sponsorship tickets for $1 million to $1.5 million per person. The exclusive streaming rights for the title fight are going to be for pay by Paramount, which is a close ally of the president. The fight is going to have multiple sponsorships from advertisers like crypto.com. So imagine having crypto.com ads at the White House, at the Lincoln Memorial. And Donald Trump himself has personally invested in the UFC's parent company and stands to gain financially from its success here. And I should say that the UFC's parent company has talked about this being an incredible marketing opportunity for them. So, this is an event where the president and his friends are going to be personally enriched from the use of our national monuments. And that's the basic problem.
I mean, if you talk, that interview is up on Legal AF YouTube channel. You should grab it now if you're interested in that. And the pleadings that have been filed are up on Legal AF Substack for you. I agree with Brendan. I think it's pretty clear that the law has been violated, that you can't just bulldozer over, take a wrecking ball to all this law and just say, it's all for the birthday party of America, when it obviously isn't. And, it's so disgusting there. Thanks for putting that photo back up. It's so disgusting to see, a Singaporean company, it's like UFC Freedom 250 brought to you by China. I mean, it's just, the legacy. Oh, leave that up there. And then I said to Brendan, are you going to make the argument that this UFC case undermines the ballroom argument about national security? Because I don't get how you can bring all these people on for a UFC fight. I thought Trump needed to be hunkered down in a bunker of his own making, or live in a hermetically sealed ballroom that was drone proof and missile proof in order to operate the presidency. I didn't realize 4,000 or 5,000 people can step out onto the lawn, and that's okay before the ballroom is built. And Baloo had a good comment. He said, it'll come up in my case, but it'll really be helpful in the ballroom case. I agree with that, for the lawyers there to argue about, what the F, and argue this completely undermines the national security issues there. So there's going to be a filing tonight. I'll cover it. A filing tomorrow. I'll cover it. And then likely a hearing. And if it's something that we can stream or attend, we'll do that too. So that's the update on the UFC fight. I think it's 60-40. It's going to be blocked, and then they'll have to take an emergency appeal to the DC appellate court. And then if that fails, an emergency appeal to the United States Supreme Court. I'll have to vote on whether, two guys can bash their brains out on the White House lawn while Donald Trump profits or not, I guess. So let me answer some questions that have come up. I saw some people talking about they're worried about the vote, and they're worried about this database that Department of Homeland Security. We've been talking about that database for about 2 months now. It's come up in court cases as well, where they're trying to we're not going to deliver the mail-in ballots with the post office if you're not on a federal register. That's the end run around about states are in control of elections. And that's not going to work. None of that's going to work. That's why attorneys general are rushing into court, filing lawsuits. They did it once before against the post office. They'll do it here against the database that's trying to be created, that it violates the Constitution about who is responsible under the Constitution for federal elections. And it's not the Fed. It is the states for a reason, because our founding fathers and framers did not trust the newly created federal government to run its own election. I don't know if you guys know this from, I'm being facetious, from documentaries and from history books, but the governments in the colonies were sort of corrupt. Many of them were. You had governors who were taking bribes, and that was also part of what the America was rebelling against. The colonial governments were about as corrupt as the ones with the British monarchy. And they wanted to wipe all that out. And they did not trust. They went with it. And that's what got us to a United States. But there was a division of labor, if you will. And now Trump's like, no, fuck that. Pardon me, folks. I'll just take over I'll just federalize the elections. And this is where the fight. So somebody asked in tonight, Dania Calico Cloud asked, Popok, do your AG acquaintances believe they're on track to ensure a free and fair midterm election, no matter what the Orange Ghouls regime tries to declare? Yeah. I mean, I've spoken at length to about 24 out of the 24 Democratic attorneys general. And we're going to be actually right before the midterms, we're going to be going out to interview them again. Note to my team, reconnect with the attorneys general group and make sure we get some interviewing going on the ground during their next retreat. Yeah, they're ready. They have lawsuits already drafted and prepared in draft to rush in on an emergency basis to stop it. I'm not worried about at the district court level, maybe in some of the red states. I'm worried about. I'm not really worried at the appellate court level, except at the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals and maybe the 11th. I'm worried about the United States Supreme Court. They've been known to interfere in elections before. 5-4 picked George Bush over Al Gore for the president, while voting was still going on in states like Florida, where I lived at the time. But I am confident that the cavalry will ride in, and then we'll have to just game play this out, game strategy this out, sort of one at a time. Let me talk about the Epstein files. Jump around a little bit. So the developments there are really centered around the questions that Todd Blanche is going to be inevitably asked during his confirmation hearing. I mean, that's going to be much watched TV. We'll have that up on Legal AF Substack, Legal AF YouTube under the live tab. We had over 150,000 people that watched the ballroom oral argument in DC Federal Appellate Court, who joined us. I did a pregame show, then went right in, answered questions during it. And I expect a similar number. I think we once had about 150,000 for the Bondi testimony when it was up, when she was Attorney General. His confirmation hearing, oh my God. I hope, and in fact, I'm going to ask Senator Whitehouse tomorrow about, put away the niceties. I don't care about relationships and friendships between senators and one party and the other. And, I like Lindsey Graham and, we've got to play the long game. No, F that. It is time to take down Todd Blanche. And you've seen it. Senator Van Hollen has certainly done it. I'm sure Senator Blumenthal, we're talking about the Senate. I'm sure Senator Blumenthal will. I'm sure Senator Whitehouse will. I'm sure, many of the senators who are on the committee who are Democrat are going to do that. And he's going to have to answer for it and answer for Pam Bondi throwing him under the bus 93 times in her closed door, unsworn in testimony. And then you've got Katie Fang's case. See, I love this for so many reasons, besides the fact that I'm personal friends with Katie Fang, dating back to when neither of us were on any kind of television or YouTube. We were just lawyers in Miami. And I met her at a fundraiser where she was thinking about running to be a judge, a state court judge, I think in Fort Lauderdale. And I met her through mutual friends at a fundraiser for another judge. And we stayed friends ever since. And I am many years older than she is. And I was giving her my own kind of mentor advice about how to succeed within a law firm. And we just stayed friends. And then I followed her career. She started out as a part-time legal analyst here and there, and then sort of got into the full-time gig of being in the media and did some, I think she was on Fox for a minute, then MSNBC, of course, and had her own show. And now we're together here on Midas. And so the fact that she stepped across the line from being a commentator about getting the Epstein files produced as the plaintiff, she's the first case and no other case so far that is arguing that the government violated the Epstein Files Transparency Act, and she's the right plaintiff to bring that to justice. And I had her, along with Allison Gill, Mueller, she wrote, who also stepped out and became a plaintiff on a show, an interview with me, sort of a roundtable, fascinating one. If you missed it, I'm going to be doing a kind of an update of it for the Midas Touch Network tomorrow. But, I had, of course, Katie on to talk about her case. Today, I had Brendan Ballou on, same guy, UFC case, who's representing Katie, and about some new developments there. Things are heating up, folks. The government just filed, like in the last couple of days, an opposition paper to their temporary restraining order. And yeah, they attacked Katie and said, oh, she doesn't have standing, and she doesn't have an injury, and she should use a Freedom of Information Act request. She doesn't need to sue, and she can't sue. Nobody can sue. They're always big on the nobody can sue part. And I think they did a great job of responding to that. But they also did a great job in saying in their paper that in the 22 pages of Todd Blanche's filing, not once did he deny that he violated the Epstein Transparency Act, that they failed to disclose Donald Trump documents. They failed to disclose documents about victims, purported victims of Donald Trump, who, claimed they're victims, and failed to disclose these foreign language documents in this crime ring. And I think you'll find, and you can pick up my interview. It's up now on Legal AF YouTube from today, but here's a clip in case you missed it. In your introduction, I don't know, we got 22 pages from Todd Blanche in opposition to our temporary restraining order, where you're trying to get the entirety of the Epstein files that were mandated to be produced to the American people through the Epstein Transparency Act, including the Trump files, the Trump purported victim files, if you will, or ones that claim to be victims, the foreign language files, the redaction log, and everything else that's missing. And you say in 22 pages, in not one word, not one page of one word of that filing, does he deny that he violated the Epstein Act.
Yeah, it's just incredible. And again, credit goes to my colleagues, Sam and Emily, who are the primary drafters on that brief. But as you said, we have moved for a preliminary injunction seeking pretty straightforward relief, where there are these various categories of information where it is just obvious that the government is breaking the law here. And the administration, in its response, didn't even try to justify it. They didn't say that they were complying with the law. They just said that Katie is not the kind of person who can sue here. And just as a matter of black letter law, they are wrong on that. So it's very clear that when the government breaks the law and fails to disclose information that it's supposed to, the people who benefit from that information have the right to sue. And so you have case after case where journalists or public interest groups are saying, look, the government said that they were going to disclose something. They never disclosed it. We have the right to sue. And so I think, frankly, the government's got a tough road on this case just because the case law is so unrelentingly against them, and because it's so obvious that they are breaking the law that they're not even trying to defend themselves.
Yeah, I think he's being kind. I think that at one point when I had my interview with him, I said, there's one case, for instance, that you cited that is, in the law, we say it's on all fours, meaning it's like exactly your case. And they don't even bother to acknowledge that case exists. I joke that in my 35 years in a legal career, I can't tell you how many associates I would constructively criticize, I guess is the right word, when they handed me an opposition paper. And I'd say, where is the section where you distinguish the case law from the other side? Yeah, I mean, you have to distinguish it. And if you can't distinguish it, I guess we don't have a case, right? There's always a way to distinguish it in some way, factually or legally. But they didn't even try in Katie Fang's case. So I think Judge Sullivan, Emmett Sullivan, is going to, the main argument is she doesn't have standing. And they argue she has informational standing, informational injury, pardon me, which is a type of injury where you need information or you desire information from the government and they're not transparent, won't give it to you. And hers is, I can't do my job. I cannot do my job as a commentator or reporter who's been tracking the Epstein scandal since it broke, but it also makes us, Katie and me and Ben, we look complicit. Like, Popok, you're taking the spoon feeding from the Trump administration. You're not leaving every rock unturned. It's like we're stymied, we're blocked, and So I think Emmett Sullivan at the end of the month, it'll be a June 30th hearing, and we'll report on it we'll update it on Legal AF YouTube channel. I think he's going to find that Katie has standing. Now, whether on the merits, he's going to order the next 3 million pages of the Epstein files released, and that the foreign documents get translated, and all sorts of other. I think so. I mean, we're just trying to get some judge to provide oversight over the act. Their main argument is the act is the act, and nobody has standing. There's no what we call private right of action. You can't sue on it. It just exists. It's just free. It's just a free radical. It just floats around and nobody can enforce it because, the trick that the Trump administration tries in every effing case, every legal AF in case is, it's really two sides of the same coin. You, judge, don't have any jurisdiction and any oversight over this branch because we reign supreme in fill in the blank, national security, war powers, or the like. And so even though you're a co-equal branch and there's supposed to be checks and balances, there's no checks and balances here. Okay. And if that doesn't work, the flip side of the coin is, and that party that brought this case, they're strangers to the case. They don't have any injury. They don't have standing. They can't bring the case. And therefore you don't have jurisdiction, case dismissed. They lead off with that in every case. We saw it in the ballroom oral argument last week, especially when the judge says, can Trump just knock over the Statue of Liberty and that's okay? And I give the guy credit, the advocate for the Department of Justice, Yakov Roth, he stays with his mission. He loses all credibility as an advocate, but based on the principles we've discussed, yes, Your Honor. I'm like, are you? That was your SEAL Team 6 moment. That was the moment where you got asked, like John Sauer did in the immunity case, who's now our Solicitor General, could Donald Trump take out Joe Biden using SEAL Team 6 and get away with it? Same thing. Can he just destroy the Statue of Liberty? It's just unbelievable. We have so many more unbelievable or believable things that I'm going to cover here at the intersection. The anti-weaponization fund, I need to update that on like 3 different levels. Lots of activity today. Circle Friday on your calendar, big red letter day, and you're gonna want to hear what Jamie Raskin has to say about all this. As our leader, as the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, and then I'm going to talk about the Southern Poverty Law Center, near and dear to my heart. The leading anti-hate group in America that keeps an eye on 4,000 anti-hate groups, regardless of political stripe, from the left to the right and everything in between, from socialist to fascist to white supremacist to white Christian nationalist to Jewish. I mean, it doesn't Muslim. It doesn't matter to them. If they're a hate group and they fit the definition, boom, they're in the book. The problem is Donald Trump hates the anti-hate group. I recently interviewed one of the leading experts who runs an organization about hate speech on the internet. It's an anti-hate speech on the internet group. And they're now branded some sort of leftist, Antifa organization to try to put them out of business. This is all the greatest trick that Donald Trump has ever done or tried to do. Although he's been caught, you can tell by the polling, which is historically abysmal, is that he tries to convince everybody that the left is bad, Democrats bad, Republicans right, good. All violent crime comes from the left, just turning it upside down. So Southern Poverty Law Center just got a great order from an Alabama judge, which I will talk to you about when I come back. But a couple of ways to support what we do here on the intersection on a Midas Touch. Let's do it in order. 1, become a subscriber of Legal AF, the YouTube channel. If I didn't need the subscribers, I promise you, I would not waste your time or my breath asking for them, but we do. It's free. You might think you're a subscriber. I don't think so. We get 40 million views a month. If I had 10% of that, I'd be breathing down the neck of the brothers. So check out, see if you're a subscriber. That's one. And, 12 fresh videos a day. I usually do the first 4. A lot of live reports, a lot of interviews. You're going to like Legal AF YouTube channel. Legal AF Substack. There we go. That's my signal for, there we go. Legal AF Substack. I do live reporting every day. Tomorrow, programming note, I'll be at 12 o'clock on the dot with Adam Klasfeld, All Rise News, doing our Substack Live together tomorrow. Become a subscriber there, become a paid member if you can swing it. We appreciate your generosity of time, of spirit, and occasionally of money when you can contribute that way. And then we've got the Intersection has a sponsor, or sponsors, and we appreciate them as well to keep us on the air, keep the gasoline in the tank, and we'll take a quick break for them now. In my line of work, the discovery process is everything, but there's a form of discovery happening to you every day that you never consented to. Right now, your personal records, home address, phone number, and even relatives' names are being discovered, packaged, and sold by an unregulated industry of data brokers. This isn't just about privacy, it's about security. This data is the primary fuel for the identity theft and sophisticated scams we see dominating the headlines. That is why I've partnered with Incogni. Think of Incogni as your personal privacy advocate. Instead of you spending dozens of hours navigating the labyrinth opt-out processes that these brokers intentionally make difficult, Incogni handles the legal work of demanding your information be removed. They initiate the request and follow up to ensure those brokers actually comply with the law. What really sets them apart is their unlimited plan, which features custom removals. This is for those hard-to-scrub sites that fall outside the standard lists, like old news portals, random blogs, or sketchy directories. If you find your info somewhere it shouldn't be, you simply send Incogni the link. Their team of privacy experts then handles the manual takedown for you, start to finish. I've used this service myself, and the continuous monitoring in the background is the only way to ensure that once your data is gone, it stays gone. Take control of your personal data risk-free for 30 days. Go to incogni.com/truth and use code TRUTH to get 60% off an annual plan. It's time to take your data off the market before it's used against you with code TRUTH at incogni.com/truth to reclaim your privacy today. You've got weight loss goals, but hitting them is another story. Enter Weight Loss by Hims. It's designed to support you in losing the weight and keeping it off, and Hims now offers access to an affordable range of FDA-approved GLP-1 medications, including the Wegovy pill and the Wegovy pen. With Wegovy at Hims, lose up to 20% or more of your body weight when combined with diet and exercise. It helps you regulate your appetite and eat less, so success is within reach. Plus, Wegovy is the first ever GLP-1 pill for weight loss, so there are no needles needed. Through Hims, everything happens online. You'll connect with a licensed provider who will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your medication is delivered right to your door. No insurance necessary, and it doesn't stop there. Hims makes hitting your goals seamless by offering access to 24/7 messaging with your care team and an in-app lifestyle and nutrition support, like recipes, meal plans, fitness videos, sleep content, and more. Ready to reach your goals? Visit hims.com/truth to get a personalized, affordable plan that gets you. That's HIMS.com/truth, hims.com/truth. Weight Loss by Hims is not available in all 50 states. Wegovy is the registered trademark of Novo Nordisk AS. To get started and learn more, including important safety information, Wegovy clinical study information, and restrictions, visit hims.com. And welcome back to the Intersection. I think we have a legal AF swiper. Maybe we'll make an Intersection swiper. We're still a garage band, everybody. I don't know if you know that. But put your questions up in comments. I'll grab them and try to answer as many as I can as the show progresses. Anti-weaponization fund is on the mind of everybody. Let me give you the highlights. It's not dead. I don't care what Todd Blanche told a congresswoman during a question and answer period. It's not dead because he didn't put it in writing, because he didn't sign his name to it, because he didn't file an affidavit that says it's dead, because Donald Trump keeps reviving it like a zombie fund because he wants it, because Donald Trump thought enough of it and it being a real thing that he just walked out on Kristen Welker during an interview where she pressed too hard by asking him a question about the fund. So no, it's not over because they say, well, didn't you watch the TV, Judge? It's like, yeah, we watched the TV, but that's not how it works in a courtroom. And it's going to be all before Judge Brinkema, Eastern District of Virginia, senior status judge, on Friday in a big hearing, or whether she's going to continue the block on the fund. Their argument, there's nothing to block. There's nothing to see here. The argument by Democracy Forward, I'm sure their filings, which we'll grab a hold of, are going to be, you can't trust the Department of Justice or Donald Trump. And if they have no problem, then it should be continue to be blocked, not it's moot, lose your jurisdiction. And I don't think she's going to take the bait and get rid of her jurisdiction. At the same time, the House Democrats and the Senate Democrats are trying to pin the tail right on the Republicans' backside by making them vote up or down about the fund. Now, they ran away screaming because it's so radioactive, even they don't want to vote on it. But they also, it's going to be a great campaign ad where the Democrats get to say, had an opportunity to vote against the fund that's going to reward, paramilitary groups and those that hurt and beat up our law enforcement. Are you okay with that? If you are, vote for MAGA and Republicans. And Jamie Raskin has a new bill out there as well. But Jamie's got a great view, as you would hope. And he's the guy that will get the gavel. For those that wonder, what are the big changes when the Democrats get the House? The Democratic leadership gets the gavel. And he who gets the gavel gets to decide the agenda, how the hearings run, what subpoenas are issued, and the rest. And the person who will get the gavel for the House Judiciary Committee is Jamie Raskin. And if you don't know about him, you're going to know about him now with my interview with him at the Net Roots conference in Philadelphia over the weekend on this very issue. Let's play the clip.
Term weaponization or the term lawfare, which don't exist in law. Nobody's ever passed a federal or state law around it. And then he says it's dead. Well, that's not a legal concept. Have they withdrawn and terminated this fund for all time? Because when he says it's dead, we know that Trump can say tomorrow it's alive. In fact, Trump says he still loves the idea.
Absolutely.
And in any event, they have not foreclosed the possibility of just using money directly from the judgment fund, which is what they did for Michael Flynn, the disgraced former national security advisor. They just wrote him a check for $1.25 million after he had already lost the case.
And Ashley Babbitt's family.
Right.
$5 million, despite the fact two different federal investigations said that the police had acted reasonably and lawfully in repelling the mob violent attack on the Congress and the vice president. So these people are acting like absolute bandits. It's a gangster state right now.
Right.
So let's talk about the Blanche Act that you've proposed. We see Scott Bessent getting his backside handed to him by your colleagues about the attempt to wipe away years of tax and audit liability. Todd Blanche has not yet had to answer for that in Congress, but he will with your act. Talk about the Super Pardon Act the Blanche Act that you've just proposed.
Well, it shuts down both of this specific one and any attempts to do the same thing in the future. The president should not be able to bring a lawsuit against the government and then settle the lawsuit by giving himself permanent lifetime immunity from any crimes or civil offenses committed. And in this case, it applies not just to Trump, but to his whole family. So this is about insider trading. This is about political corruption. It's about bribery. It could be about rape and sexual assault. In the Epstein files, they've dealt themselves a get out of jail free card for all time. And so
yeah, and as we're talking about all those things, we just got the alert that, and this is why elections matter if you didn't realize it before, by just 2 votes, 214 to 212, the MAGA in the House, led by Mike Johnson, just passed a $70 billion funding bill, which will cover ICE and Donald Trump's inhumane immigration and migration and removal policies, including for Homeland Security and for ICE over the next 3 years. So it totally covers the duration of the Trump administration, so they don't have to deal with it again. And it passed literally by 2 2 votes, and they bypassed the ballroom issue. So it doesn't include the funds for the $1 billion in the ballroom. And it doesn't include a vote against the anti-weaponization fund by 2 votes. 2 people representing districts of about, let's just call it, each district in America is approximately 70,000 people. So 142 people representing 140,000 people in total in a $330 million country just gave Donald Trump carte blanche on his immigration policies. And if that doesn't make you feel good, then put all of that anxiety and angst and anger into voter mobilization, your own and those of people around you. Tomorrow on the live edition of the Midas Touch Legal AF podcast, I'm going to be having Mark Elias of Democracy Docket on to talk about California fraud bullshit allegations by the 40-year-old puppet U.S. attorney, assistant deputy U.S. attorney, because he can't even get anybody confirmed out there in L.A., who thinks it's fraud because California and its Attorney General Rob Bonta are complying with the law about how to count votes, mainly mail-in ballots. I mean, let's just call it out. California had 16 million people vote. 13 million people were by mail-in ballot. Mail-in ballots take a minute to open and read and to confirm signatures and to book them. And that's and plus there's a 7 days. So there's another, I think it's today's the last day for if you mailed it on election day or by election day with a canceled postmark, it gets counted. So those are just getting counted today. And there's 21 days to compare signatures. So yeah, it takes a minute. In fact, I'm going to have Rob Bonta, another programming note. I feel like a name dropper. I'm going to have Rob Bonta, the Attorney General of California, on with me on Friday. And that'll be an interview you get to catch on Legal AF on YouTube. So the easiest way to kill the fun. What is the silver bullet? What is the stake through the heart? It's really Judge Williams. I was talking to Brendan Ballou, the lawyer for public integrity, and he and I both agreed that the simplest and most efficient path is to have her, after she gets full briefing, declare that there was a fraud on the court, that the lawsuit, which was the predicate for the settlement, and Todd Blanche's use of his settlement powers under the Judgment Act, that was fraudulent, that was illegitimate. So the settlement was illegitimate. So the powers of Todd Blanche in settling were illegitimate, and therefore also the attempt by Todd Blanche the day after the settlement to enter into an amendment to the settlement by himself with no other parties involved, if that doesn't demonstrate collusive behavior where there's no adversary party, is that Todd Blanche thought the next day he didn't need the approval of Donald Trump's lawyers or the IRS, right? Because you're all working on the same side of the V, and therefore you don't have adversariness, and therefore the court never had jurisdiction. That actually proves the point, Todd. But that goes by the wayside too. This super pardon that pardons Donald Trump and his family for everything they may have done. This is the get out of jail free card. Everything they may have done forever under this weaponization, not defined, under this lawfare, not defined, because they don't want to define it, because they want Donald Trump to wave it around one day when the new Department of Justice goes after him and says, but I got a release right here signed by the Attorney General. And what's going to happen is the Department of Justice in 2028, led by Democrats, is going to say, yeah, we've thought better of it, and we're not going to abide by it, and we don't think it's valid. And so we're suing you, or we're prosecuting you, or whatever we're doing to you. And that's what's going to happen. And that's going to keep Legal AF, the YouTube channel, and the intersection alive and functioning until my daughter, who's 2, goes to college. All kidding aside. So that's where we are. Red Letter Day, Friday. This Friday, we'll cover it. on Legal AF YouTube channel. You're going to want to know about what happens in Judge Brinkema's chambers. You're going to want to know what happens in Judge Williams' courtroom as well. And we'll bring it all to you. And then, as I'm able to, I'll bring the newsmakers, the lawyers handling the case on here as well. Let's see some questions. No substitutions. Popok, I think if the Dems win majority in the midterms, Trump and Todd will pardon Ghislaine before the Democrats swear in their majority. I mean, that would be the time to do it. Ghislaine Maxwell pardon. Because Trump, if he loses the midterms, he's done. He's toast. I'm not sure he wants the pardon of a convicted child sex trafficker as part of that, but he's done other disgusting things. Shelley, something else asked, do you think the anti-weapon fund will go to the Supreme Court? Yeah, likely. And they're going to have to now revisit. I've always said that the immunity decision is not by the Supreme Court is not over. The first chapter's been written, but the future Department of Justice is going to test the actual limits of that case and about the Supreme Court's ability to declare what is or what is not immune. And the future Congress is going to, hopefully led by the Democrats, is going to reimpose criminal liability on the president. And then it's going to go up to the Supreme Court again and again and again, with indictments testing the limits of that presidential immunity law. Because it's not a science, it's not a computer program. It's a bunch of words down on a piece of paper by 6 human beings. So it needs to be tested and retested over and over again. And it will be. But it's one of the aspects of what the Department of Justice and the new Solicitor General's office, run by the Democrats, are going to have to do. The Fiery Eagle Wolf 665, were there 664 others that had that name, asked on the fund, what happens after the fraud on the court is found by Judge Williams? Does anything happen to the people? Yeah, she's already raised the specter of Rule 11, which is a major sanction. It's money, millions of dollars, including Trump having to pay the millions of dollars. But he's got the money, so that's not going to scare him. And then it's a referral, a criminal referral, which the Department of Justice won't do anything about, but maybe she can appoint her own prosecutor. That's happened in the past. And a referral about bar licenses, like Todd Blanche's. There's already a bar referral about his bar license in New York. He and I have one thing in common. We're both New York bar members. And we'll see if the first appellate division, I think we're both members of the first appellate division, is what they're going to do with multiple ethics charges against Todd Blanche. The word of 7 asks, should precedent of pardons be limited? Yes, but until we amend the Constitution, that's not the law. Not to say that we shouldn't amend the Constitution. As I've said before, the founding fathers and the framers of the Constitution intended that we amend the Constitution. They'd be shocked at how infrequently we've amended the Constitution. They never thought it should be trapped in amber, as a nod to my glasses tonight, and that it should be, a brittle document. They thought it should be a living, breathing document, not dead, which is what Antonin Scalia once called it. And it should be amended. It should be amended to match the mores and the values of our current society. And yet we haven't amended anything. Last time we tried, I think it was 1973. The Equal Rights Amendment, I guess, got passed. It's hard to tell. But, it's been decades. By contrast, state constitutions have been amended thousands of times in the last 50 years. And yet the United States Constitution, not a whit. Best way to do it, a constitutional convention, but it depends who's there. The real thing that got me up and running, up and motivated, and fired up and rejuvenated at Netroots was the SCOTUS, the Supreme Court reform panels that I attended. And we got to reform the Supreme Court. And the Democrats have got to lead on it. We got to add 3 justices. We got to add term limits. We've got to have rotating groups in and off. We have to have an ethics code. And that starts now. And then Congress, led by the Democrats, have to take back the power that they've ceded to the United States Supreme Court to declare what the law is. Just because the Supreme Court says that's the law doesn't mean that it is the law. Congress can declare it, you know. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say that the final word on constitutional and statutory interpretation is the Supreme Court. Until about 60, 70 years ago, the Supreme Court used to have its courtroom inside Congress. You know, it is animated by Congress. And if the Supreme Court doesn't like it as part of Supreme Court reform, then they can go fund themselves. Your hearing isn't bad. They can go fund themselves because the power of the purse string is held by Congress. And so if they don't like it, then Congress should cut off the funds and say, until you relent. I mean, FDR only had to threaten the United States Supreme Court that he was going to pack the court and double its size. And they relented and suddenly started approving of New Deal legislation instead of rejecting it. Now, it was a different time. The Democrats, get this, the Democrats had 73 out of the 100 seats were Democratic held when FDR was in power. So that was a real threat. Like, okay. But funding can be cut off. That's a congressional thing. Cut it off. You know, forget the Kennedy Center shutting down. Shut down the United States Supreme Court. Send them off into a strip mall somewhere in Arlington, Virginia. One of the people on the panel, Alex Aronson from Court Accountability Action, he joked they can have their own Chick-fil-A. I was like, put them between the Orange Julius and the Krispy Kreme and make them change their robes there and see how quick they get out of their hermetically sealed chamber. You know, start playing hardball, you know. And 9 is not, you know, we could waste all of our time the rest of the night tonight to go look in the Constitution for where 9 as a Supreme Court is in the Constitution. It's not a baseball game. 9 it's not part of the rules. It's not in the Constitution. It's been as low as 6. Then it was 7. Then it was 9. Then it was 7 again. You know, it's just a made up number by Congress. Fix it. It's the only way to balance the imbalance of power in this country with an out of control Supreme Court that created a out of control monster, Frankenstein of a president. Period. Let me end tonight talking about the Southern Poverty Law Center quickly. Southern Poverty Law Center, you should go on their website. You should support them. The leading anti-hate group in America. And the problem for Donald Trump and for MAGA and FBI and all of that is that many of the groups that are listed in the book, Donald Trump doesn't hate. He likes. You know, there's good people on both sides of an insurrection. There's good people on both sides of a cross burning. And there's groups like the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers and other groups and Nick Fuentes and that are listed in the book and with paragraph descriptions. Trump doesn't like that. So after Charlie Kirk's murder, he went after the left and anybody that they think is anti-Trump but pro-democracy, and that included the Southern Poverty Law Center. And they follow 4,000 organizations to keep track of them, to try to either litigate them out of existence or use informants within the organizations paid to give information over to the FBI and try to break them apart and destroy them that way. And they've been successful. But now they're being accused of, do your donors know that you're using their money in order to infiltrate hate groups? Yes. And I'd be upset if they weren't doing that. But once the FBI severed the ties through Patel with the SP, the Southern Poverty Law Center, then it was like, see, they're not giving us any tips. They did. Hundreds of organizations were put out of business, including the KKK, because of the Southern Poverty Law Center. You know, they're not right of center. They're not left of center. They're not center. They're just independent in their analysis. And sometimes, you know, they make harsh criticism, you know, just because I've said this before, just because you criticize Israel, its military policy, and its current leadership doesn't mean you're anti-Semitic. It just means you can separate the religion from the government and its response to things, you know? So just because the Southern Poverty Law Center called out some of the policies or some of the actions of some of the groups doesn't make them anti-Semitic. So the two things happened in the last 24 hours. The head of the Southern Poverty Law Center got pulled on the carpet in Congress, and then a federal judge in Alabama granted the Southern Poverty Center's order to show cause because they moved this much closer to getting their indictment dismissed. So they were criminally indicted in Alabama. They already filed a motion to dismiss for vindictive prosecution. That's pending. Then, because there's so much outcry, hue and cry against the Department of Justice and Blanche about indicting the Southern Poverty Law Center, it was one of the things he did to get the nomination. They decided, we'll do a speaking indictment. We'll amend the indictment. We'll get a superseding indictment from a grand jury. We'll put some more evidence in there, some more dollars in there, and then that'll fix their wagon. Except they had it in draft, and before they took it to the grand jury, they leaked it on purpose to the right-wing media, violating the grand jury secrecy, polluting the process, undermining their independence, and violating a federal rule of criminal procedure, Rule 6. So the Southern Poverty Law Center filed a motion to get an order to show cause from the judge about this conduct, that it should be sanctioned and that the prejudice against the Southern Poverty Law Center should be evaluated by the judge. And the judge took a big black Sharpie and signed it and granted the order to show cause, giving the government until Monday to explain why they shouldn't be sanctioned for having leaked it and what should the remedy be to the Southern Poverty Law Center. I know what it should be: the dismissal of the indictment, and this is all before an Alabama federal judge. In the meantime, right on cue, because Trump, there's this when I say there's this choreographed pitch and catch, call and response between the White House and MAGA in Congress and the committees, right? We saw it in the Epstein files, where MAGA Congress hearings and committees run interference for Trump. So when Trump is drowning in bad press, and Blanche is too, they say, okay, Southern Poverty Law Center seems to be popular with people. We got to do something to undermine him. While we're doing the lawsuit, you open up some committee hearings and bring in the leader and put him on the hot seat. Maybe he'll say something stupid. It'll help us. So he came in and he didn't say anything stupid. But let me show you the clips of what they're trying to do to the Southern Poverty Law Center. We got two. We're going to play back to back. Let's play them.
Did you do it all for the money? You said I think the Southern Poverty Law Center said you're no longer going to use these field sources. You're going to stop the program. But you did it for multiple years. And according to the indictment, it was $4 million that you shelled out to these various field sources to engage in all the activities I just read. Was it all about the money?
As we said in our public statement, Chairman Jordan, we did it to protect our staff and to protect the public.
Did fundraising increase after paying people to stay in these groups who actually wanted out of them? Did your fundraising increase? Did the donations coming in increase?
Chairman Jordan, I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to when you say.
How about this? After the crazy Charlottesville rally, did fundraising go up?
Mr. Chairman, our fundraising went up.
Fundraising where one of your field sources helped coordinate transportation.
Our fundraising went up when President Donald Trump was elected in 2016.
Fundraising go up after you paid a field source to coordinate the transportation at an event in Charlottesville where a person was killed. That's what I'm asking. Did it go up? Because according to what we know, you went from 51 million to 133 million in 1 year.
And that happened when President Donald Trump was elected.
Who's the president of the National Socialist Party? You know? You paid him $70,000. He was field source number 30. I just want to know who he is. Do you know who he is?
Mr. Chairman, that's an allegation in the indictment that will be responded to by counsel in the Middle District of Alabama.
My time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from New York.
Yeah. So, just trying to embarrass the Southern Poverty Law Center about a pending case, many items of which the guy can't respond to because it's in litigation, as a lot of witnesses for Donald Trump in Congress like to say frequently. Todd Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, can't talk about the granting of immunity for all tax and audit liability to the Trump family because the case is in litigation, which is not exactly true, by the way, when it comes to that part of the settlement. But it's just, I think the major point there that the SPLC leader, Mr. Fair, well, that's a properly named guy, is the fundraising went up because of Trump, not because of that terrible event, Unite the White, Unite the Right in Charlottesville, Virginia, that led to the death of a paralegal when she was run over by a crazed member of that hate group. The hate event that Jim Jordan, I guess, conveniently forgets is the one that Donald Trump said when he was president, there are good people on both sides. People that were chanting with torches, they will not replace us, and calling out Jews and using Nazi slogans. That group, they're good. It's a debate. There's good people. No, that's why we don't both sides the Holocaust. We don't both sides Charlottesville. And I think the Southern Poverty Law Center has a very good case that they are being brass-knuckled by an out-of-control Department of Justice. In my career, until the last 20 months, including, I have never had to report on a Department of Justice having abused the principles of federal prosecution, the Department of Justice manual, federal rules of criminal procedure, constitutional law, professional rules of responsibility and ethics, more than this administration's Department of Justice. If I had to do it twice in my life, maybe, and this is a regular occurrence, abuse of the grand jury process, abuse of the jury process, abuse of judges. This is why 200 former federal judges have joined together, yoked together by people like J. Michael Ludick, friend of the podcast, to file brief after brief after brief and motion after motion to hold the Trump administration accountable and to give a backbone and reinforcement to the sitting federal judges. That's the reason on Friday, Judge Williams is waiting for a response, because 35 federal judges, former federal judges, told her, you got to reopen the case of Trump versus the IRS. There's a fraud on the court. There's deceit on the court. You need to do something about it. And right on cue, she's doing something about it. But the Southern Poverty Law Center, I think, has a very good argument. Monday, we'll get the opposition paper to the order to show cause, why sanctions shouldn't be brought against the Department of Justice. And then the Southern Poverty Law Center has another few days to do its response, and they're going to be hearing yet another hearing. Think about from the top of tonight's intersection that we're now wrapping up. How many court hearings, what things we're waiting on. We're still waiting on the United States Supreme Court to rule on birthright citizenship. Could come any day. They've announced that on Thursday they're going to be dropping new orders, new opinions. Birthright citizenship, mail-in balloting, the independence of the Federal Reserve, to name but three, and transgender rights in sport, all up. We're still waiting for that final round of dumps from the United States Supreme Court. We're waiting for the appellate panel about the ballroom, who just heard oral argument, to issue their ruling. We're waiting for Judge Brinkema on Friday to hold a hearing to decide whether to continue to block the anti-weaponization fund. We're waiting for Judge Williams, after she gets final briefing on Friday, about whether she's going to block the anti-weaponization fund and declare it to be null and void, along with its settlement addition to give Donald Trump pardon power. These things matter. Attorneys general were just successful in getting the $100,000 H-1B visa fee struck in Massachusetts. That was brought by California's Attorney General Rob Bonta, who will be with me on Friday. These court cases at the intersection of law and politics matter. And even if I have to also report, because we don't blow smoke or sunshine, that the Congress just passed, the House just passed by 2 votes. Think about that. A 3-year funding plan for ICE and for Border Patrol. And people throw up their pen and say, "What? Oh, another one. Got another one." And the answer to that is voter mobilization. You got to vote. Give the Democrats, who are now, as you can see, 2 votes short, give them those votes and more. Give them the 240 or 250 seats. You need 218 to govern. Give them 240. So they don't have to worry about attendance. And you'll see things change to align with your own values, to align with your own morality, to align with your own sense of patriotism and your own sense of American values. Because right now it's out of a line. It's out of whack. And so that's step 1. Step 2, Senate. And not just get 1 or 2 more than majority, which is what it's looking like right now, even with some crazy shit going on in Maine. Win North Carolina with Roy Cooper. Win Ohio with Sherrod Brown. Win in Alaska. We can do those things, along with, Ossoff in Georgia, that kind of thing. We can give up some of the seats that are out there. But give me that string, give me that constellation and more. Because I think that MAGA and Trump have underestimated public outrage about what they're watching this administration do on an hourly basis. And if the demographic shifts hard to the left, the way it did subtly to the right when Kamala was the nominee, then the Senate falls into line. That's why predictive markets, those stubborn little sport-like marketplaces, like sports books, are predicting almost 50% chance, which is the highest they've seen in a long time, of the Democrats sweeping in 2028 the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And then accountability is returned to American life. Starts at the midterms, and then a springboard effect into 2028, giving the candidate for the Democrats wind at their sail for that election. And 2 years of adults in office working on affordability, working on healthcare, working on the social safety net, working on taxes, working on affordability and all those things, and restoring dignity to the immigration and migration policies, and then rooting out corruption, passing bills and laws so you can't profit from your government service, and impeachment proceedings, right? Impeachment proceedings. And then when the Department of Justice is turned over to the Democrats, then criminal prosecutions and investigations happen, much like what happened at the end of the Nixon presidency. You can count on a lot of fingers how many people in the Nixon administration went to jail and or lost their bar license. And we're watching it repeat itself, right? As, I don't know, it was Mark Twain, you can correct me in the comments, once said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And I think we're watching rhyming history moving forward if the voter mobilization and get out the vote happens. If all the people who are being polled vote according to their interests, align with their interests, this is a no-brainer. This is why Donald Trump, knowing he's a short-termer, knowing that he's going to be powerless come the midterms, having lost the House and the Senate, why we see him wrecking so much havoc, Put my name and a gold medallion on everything. Okay. Put my name up. Nope, take it down from the Kennedy Center. Tidy bulb blew the reflecting pool, before somebody can stop me. And he's running around doing all this stuff. Make as much money as I can. Billions of dollars for my friends and my family. This was the checklist that people, at least some people, some millions of people that didn't vote, kind of ignored. The only thing, Donald Trump is not a populist. He doesn't care about you and me. He would not. This is why he doesn't go out and meet anybody. They have to put him up Madison Square Garden. My favorite reporting from the last day or so was the New York Post, owned by Rupert Murdoch. It said, Trump salutes crowd at the NBA championship game. Some booing heard. Are you kidding me? Do we have the clip? It rained. I've been to the Garden a number of times since I was a child. It rained down from the 500 deck down. And he's such a coward that he had to bring his granddaughter, Kayla, whatever her name is, as a human shield, hoping that they would not boo him if he was next to his granddaughter. Yuck. Ugh. It's like when Howard Lutnick, by the way, where is Howard Lutnick? Somebody wrote in the chat, where is Kash Patel? Where is Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary? Ever since he gave the $5 million to the Republican committee before he testified to the Republicans about his Epstein relationship, he didn't go to China for the big whatever. He wasn't next to Donald Trump at the Knicks game, at the Knicks San Antonio playoff game. No, I saw Sean Duffy, Transportation Secretary. I saw the Interior Secretary. Oh, Salton, so my buddy says he was courtside. Okay, I am sworn to secrecy about how Howard Lutnick got his courtside seats. I'll leave it at that. Okay, so he was courtside, but he wasn't next to the president. It's hilarious, But Donald Trump trots himself out for all these populist things. Like, I'm going to go to UFC. I'm going to go to a college football championship. I'm going to steal a medal and a trophy. And that's a cover-up. That is a triage for his hemorrhaging popularity. And the midterms, he knows, is going to be a bloodbath, And that's that. We cover it all here on The Intersection. You're here with us. Your generosity of spirit, of time, is so appreciated. And you know how to support us to keep the gas in the tank, to keep us on the air. The Webby Award. Oh, look, I got the Webby symbol here, and I've got the Webby hardware here because we just got it yesterday. Yes, we did. And that's all because of you. I'm just your ambassador. Anytime I interview somebody, I go somewhere, and I wear a Legal AF badge, I'm there for you. That's how I never misalign my values with yours, because I feel like I'm your fiduciary in bringing you honest commentary and reporting together. Support us. Come to Legal AF YouTube channel. Hit that free subscribe button. Help us continue to grow. We're going to get to, I think, 1.2 million subscribers in the next month or two before the summer is over, certainly. And then we go from there. Legal AF Substack, where we post all of the filings, and we have live reporting. Tomorrow I'll be on with Adam Klasfeld at noon. Legal AF Substack, become a member of that amazing community. And then we've got our sponsors, which have joined us here on The Intersection as well. So pleased you're here. Programming note, let's go through it. Tomorrow, Legal AF, the podcast on the Midas Touch Network, 8 p.m. It'll be live. You can ask questions. Mark Elias joining us as a special guest. That's on Wednesday. Saturday, I'll be on with Ben Mysalis. And then, of course, we've got all the other videos and interviews that are scheduled. I got Rob Bonta, the Attorney General from California, on Friday. I got Paul Blumenthal, the senior writer for Huffington Post, about his scathing analysis of the United States Supreme Court. Benny Torres, a congressman from the Bronx in New York, about the committees that he serves on and the work that he's doing. Senator Blumenthal. Nope, sorry, not this week. Senator Whitehouse, sorry, Judiciary Committee guy, tomorrow to talk about going after, I guess, Todd Blanche, among other things. That's just the next few days. And up on Legal AF YouTube channel, my interview with Jamie Raskin at Netroots, my interview with Summer Lee at Netroots, my interview with Brendan Ballou, who's handling the Katie Fang case and the case against Trump's weaponization fund and the UFC case. So under one pane of glass, all you want to know at the intersection of law and politics is yours on Legal AF and here on The Intersection. So thank you to our audience tonight. Really active, vibrant audience. Appreciate all of you. Until my next report, shout out to the mighty smighty, the Legal AFers, and the Intersectionists. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.